For our sustainable solution, we chose to focus on clean cooking. Cooking is a sustainability initiative that aims to reduce the reliance of burning solid fuels and switch to a cleaner energy source in cooking practices. Traditional cooking practices may include burning wood, charcoal, coal, and biomass. These act as pollutants through the release of smoke and contribute to greenhouse gas emissions. In addition, the burning of these materials can cause local pollutants and reduction in air quality that has negative impacts on surrounding families and ecosystems. While there are some innovative technologies related to clean cooking, such as the use of liquid petroleum gas, LPG, and biomass stoves, these technologies are expensive. While these may reduce emissions through cooking, financial and social barriers make it challenging for families to obtain and prioritize the use of clean cooking as opposed to more traditional and accessible options. Carbon is a term for carbonaceous substances, including charred plant matter and soot. It is produced from incomplete combustion of biomass and fossil fuels. It may also be called elemental carbon. Black carbon can influence the environment at local, regional, and global scales in different ways. These can also vary in degree. Some sources of black carbon include household energy, transportation, agriculture, and industrial production. These sources can lead to increased levels which may accelerate snow and ice melting, warm the climate, prevent cloud formation, and affect plant and animal health. Black carbon only exists in the atmosphere for up to 2 weeks, which is a relatively short range. Because of this, reducing the amount of black carbon would have immediate effects on the environment. There are a lot of negative impacts of traditional stoves that have been studied over time. Traditional cooking stoves burn wood and charcoal inefficiently and without ventilation, which increases the exposure of individuals to black carbon. The unsustainable harvesting of wood fuels degrades forests and in some locations leads to deforestation, reducing habitat, biodiversity, and uptake of atmospheric carbon dioxide. Use of solid fuels in traditional stoves results in air pollution exposure levels that can reach 50 times greater than the World Health Organization guidelines for clean air. These ideas suggest the urgent need for a more sustainable fuel. The burning solid fuels in open fires and traditional stoves also releases emissions of some of the most important contributors to global climate change. There is a high reliance on traditional stoves in developing countries, and there are large populations that rely on these stoves to support families and cultures. Because the use of traditional stoves is so widespread, it has become a huge contribution to climate change overall. Lastly, there are many adverse secondary effects, including childhood pneumonia, pulmonary disease, lung cancer, cardiovascular disease. Quite a few goals of cleaner cooking solutions to try and reduce the impacts of traditional cooking and unsustainable fuels on our environment. Some of these ideas include reduce field use of unsustainable fuels, reduce long-term exposure to smoke particles, increase heat transfer efficiency, reduce heart and respiratory disease as well as deforestation, black carbon emissions through the adaptation of cleaner practices, and reduce emissions of air pollutants that affect nearby ecosystem health. While change in this area will be challenging given the many barriers that pose potential problems, there have been some ideas and developments that have shown some promise.
While liquid petroleum gas, also known as LPG, is still a fossil fuel, it's considered a cleaner alternative to traditional solid fuels such as wood or charcoal. It produces fewer harmful emissions, specifically lower levels of fine particulate matter and carbon monoxide. These reductions are significant enough to have real health benefits. According to McAllister et al., there's even evidence suggesting that if Africa were to fully transition to LPG for cooking, the region could see a net cooling effect on the climate due to decreased emissions of black carbon and other pollutants. The Clean Cooking Program provides a real-world example of both the potential and the challenges of transitioning to LPG. With $20 million in funding from the World Bank, the goal was to provide LPG stoves to about 450,000 households. However, within a year, many households went back to using solid fuels. The program had hoped that once the initial cost was covered, families would use their savings on wood fuel to buy LPG refills. But in rural areas, wood is often free, while maintaining a regular supply of LPG can cost up to 18% of a household's monthly income. Add in travel costs for refills, stove maintenance, and replacements, These barriers made continuous use difficult. One finding that stood out was households were about 25% more likely to stick with LPG if they were given two cylinders instead of one, which helped manage the refill gaps. LPG, there are a few other promising clean cooking solutions. Some stoves now incorporate small fans to improve combustion efficiency. This means they burn fuel more completely, which reduces emissions. Another simple yet effective solution is building chimneys into cook stoves, which helps vent smoke outside and reduce long-term indoor exposure. And looking ahead, there's exciting progress in solar-powered and high-efficiency stoves that could either use renewable energy or burn fuel more cleanly. These are being explored by many groups as part of a broader effort to cut greenhouse gases emissions while improving health outcomes in developing regions.
Global cooking practices traditionally rely on wood fuels, accounting for roughly 7% of global energy use. Relying on wood fuel introduces a multitude of sustainability issues, from air pollutant emissions to impacts on forest habitats and diversity. According to the World Health Organization, as mentioned previously, the use of solid fuels in traditional stoves can result in air pollution levels that can reach 50 times greater than the clean air guidelines. This number varies depending on socioeconomic status and other factors, but exposure to toxic compounds such as carbon monoxide and black carbon. In countries that also rely on cow dung and crop residues for cooking fuel, toxic nitrogen oxides and sulfur are also released. Even burning sustainably harvested wood is not climate neutral, as it still emits other pollutants such as black carbon, carbon monoxide, and other volatile organic compounds. In societies, women and girls are commonly responsible for cooking. This stems from traditional gender roles and patriarchal ideologies. We often look at the health risks associated with unsustainable cooking practices, and while these are integral to human well-being, these results are often long-term and difficult to acutely observe. A study done by Acker and Pratap found 3 major benefits of LPG adoption on women's welfare, these being reduced fuel collection and preparation time, reduced cooking time, and convenient cooking arrangements. Using qualitative methods, it was observed that women who adopted LPG showed improvements in social status, health, and increased free time from cooking. Fuel collection, preparation, and cooking diminishes opportunities in household contribution, and underpaid domestic work results in limited financial freedom. Looking at the concept map provided by the authors, the direct link between LPG adoption and women's autonomy ranges from immediate to long-term benefits. An alternate study in rural Ghana was conducted to observe the effects of clean cooking interventions on household pollutant exposure. The goal was to improve the living conditions for pregnant women, increase birth weights of newborns, and decrease the child mortality rate from respiratory disease. The results of the LPG stove indicated a significant decrease in overall household carbon monoxide exposure, but long-term results proved to have no effect due to the nature of the study. Due to the random dispersion of studied households, neighboring emissions still proved to be a barrier in regards to lowering overall exposure. This means that the implementation of clean cookware requires post-intervention supervision to meet health-relevant expectations.
LPG stoves is something that is detrimental to those who live in rural low-income areas. Understanding the finances that go into a transition so large is very important, and the source of the subsidies also plays a large part in the transition. Maintaining a supply of LPG for continuous and primary use is difficult because, as said before, there is an issue with continuous supply and usage of the LPG. If people use one form of cooking for a while, then they are more likely to go back to what they know. Traveling to and from refill stations, although as you can see on the map, with all of the refill stations that are accessible to the public, these refill stations still have the possibility of being a great sum of distance for those that live in more rural areas. Location, rural or urban. The connection between clean cooking and living in rural areas compared to those of urban areas is an important aspect to look at when it comes to the ability for those living in those different areas to access the locations. In northern Ghana, the population is 2.31 billion. 784,420 people reside in Tamale. Although this is a great number of people, that is where the majority of the refuel stations are located. Over 1 million people live in other areas other than Tamale. The distance between the refuel stations outside of the city is sparse, and this occurs in more than just northern Ghana. Authority and economic power within the household to impose their decision. So women and children typically have less of a say when it comes to decision making. This goes along with the traditional gender roles that we said in earlier slides. Age also plays a huge role when it comes to transitioning to clean cooking. Those within age groups that are older, they will typically follow cooking that they used to do rather than transitioning, and they're just so used to this type of cooking that it is easier for them to do. Household size, the larger the family, the higher the chance is for that they will not opt for a clean cooking option. Many have said that the larger the family is, the more room that they will need to cook on a stove. And so the transition to these stove tops energy is difficult for them because they need to feed more people. Reluctance to try a cleaner cooking fuel. This reluctance might be a factor as a result of the unknown. People are scared of what they do not know. Attachment to the particular taste of food cooked on traditional stoves. This goes a lot into the nostalgia of the taste of the fossil fuels that may be used to cook with, and it tastes a lot different than the newer cooking methods. Steps can be taken to mitigate solid fuels usage. First, we can improve education in rural areas. This can be by hosting seminars or within schools. Both men and women can become knowledgeable about the adverse effects of solid fuels in regards to their health and the environment as a whole. By doing this, it can create a sense of responsibility in the men to protect their wives and children, aiding the introduction of clean cooking. Community discussion, by creating a knowledgeable community that discusses current clean cooking issues. The idea of clean cooking can spread more and be more closely followed. Having others to rely on is also something that can contribute to continuing to use clean cooking to keep others on the path of continuing their journey. And then adding locations that can aid the ability for those in more rural areas to reach these refuel sites and without having to go too far from where they live. Goals go hand in hand with clean cooking, and they hold hope for the future of many of the SDGs. Although all the SDGs are tied together, the most prominent ones are number 3 and number 13. Number 3, good health and well-being. With clean cooking, it reduces the smoke emissions and inhalation of the smoke and other byproducts as a result, aiding populations having overall better health and well-being. Number 13, climate action. The action that Ghana is taking to mitigate their impact on the environment with black carbon shows great promise. An estimated 36.9% of households have access to LPG according to the 2021 population housing census. Improving the access to LPG and efficient biomass cook stoves is a priority of Ghana's sustainability energy for all. Ghana is committing to Sustainable Development Goals of universal access to modern energy services by 2030, so that is coming up very soon. The targets for clean energy include the adoption of 3 million efficient biomass stoves and 50% of liquefied petroleum gas access for cooking by 2030. These examples show that there is great promise for changing from biomass, although they may still sustain some of that biomass cooking. They are moving to a more sustainable way of cooking of the liquid petroleum gas. References, thank you so much for watching.